1. This happened a lot of years ago. Probably close to 20 years ago, actually. When my single father moved myself and my two little sisters to a not terrible but not great suburb of Denver, Colorado. The divorce had shattered him and our home. My mother had left him for another man, and the burden of raising 3 girls befell him. Skip forward a couple of months. I'm 10, my sisters are 8 and 6. We had grown fairly accustomed to the neighborhood and closely surrounding areas. My dad is working 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. in Denver, where all the best pay is, and the responsibility of my 2 little sisters became mine. I was the eldest after all. We hadn't quite melded with other kids in the area yet, but being 3 of us, we didn't mind. We were capable of entertaining ourselves. We used to ride our bicycles everywhere, to all the surrounding neighborhoods, the hiking trails along the river that led everywhere, even along the train tracks which could be found in numerous amounts throughout the town. One set of tracks in particular, in fact, the closest set to our home, had a long ditch-like valley along both sides of it. I think, in retrospect, it had been a safety-type barrier to prevent the river from flooding out the neighborhood across the street. Anyway, on one side of the tracks, it was a sheer drop-off, with heavy bushes and undergrowth preventing the ground from being easily accessible. And on the other side, there had been a path carved out. It appeared to be by vehicles, maybe servicing the train tracks in prior years, but it was extremely steep. A bicycle was more reasonable than a vehicle in my opinion, or an ATV. They called it Dead Man's Ditch, I found out later on, but this information doesn't become relevant until later. So as I said, we used to ride our bikes around town a lot, especially in the summer months during the day while Dad was at work, and we could travel farther than he allowed. We also had a game we played similar to Punch Buggy, combined with the license plate game. If any of us saw a license plate with double or triple characters consecutively, i.e. double B's or triple zeros, we would announce it, and then attempt to hit one another. It was barbaric, but we are siblings, so it's not outlandish. I don't want to share mine or my sister's names here, but on this particular day we had been riding around for a few hours, and were past the hottest part of the day. It was cooling down and gearing up for sunset. We had made our way back toward home, and were less than a 2-minute bike ride from the house. I had been hanging back a bit, so both my sisters were in front of me. The youngest in front, the middle coming up her left, furthest from the road, and myself about 6 feet behind. A few minutes prior, a silver sedan had driven past us, going the opposite way we were. The car's plate had double 6s, which I had called first. As we were headed up the street, I heard a vehicle accelerate impatiently behind me. This set off red flags, because where we were riding we actually affected the oncoming lane. This vehicle was headed the same way we were, in a completely unhindered lane. I turned to look, and automatically glanced first at the license plate, then at the silver sedan. Yep, Mr. Double Sixes was back. Now I could see him, Hispanic, mid-40s, wearing a blue and red faded farmer flannel, with no shirt underneath. He didn't say a word, he just looked at me for a second, and then sped up, veering into our lane. I watched in horror as his open driver's side window lined up with my baby sister, and he reached out and grabbed her hand and the handle to her bicycle. He slowed down a bit, trying to pull my sister off of her bike and into his open window. But something happened in his car, because all of a sudden he released my sister and put both his hands back on the wheel. She took the chance and pushed like hell off her bike, racing towards Dead Man's Ditch. My other sister and I followed suit. After a moment of what I now know was tunnel vision, I heard the acceleration of the sedan again behind me. By this time, we were all hysterical, and I was trying desperately to see through tears. This guy wasn't giving up. Whatever his deal was, he didn't want to let it go. Dead Man's Ditch was approaching quickly. Thinking on my feet, I directed both sisters down the ditch, assuming double sixes wouldn't destroy his vehicle attempting to follow. My youngest sister cowered in fear at the top, whimpering about being afraid of falling. The middle sister didn't need to be told twice. She flew down the hill like it was nothing. As I caught up to them, the car right on my back tire, I said, "Just go, this guy is going to kill us." I remember hearing her take a big breath and let her tire go down the hill. I held my breath until I was right behind her. All three of us made it down the hill, and the guy pulled his car right up to the opening of the path. He got out of his car and was stark naked, wearing only the aforementioned flannel overshirt, and boasting a giant hard-on which he proceeded to tug and wave in our general direction. I stood between my sisters and this creep, and after a few minutes of his exposure, I guess he decided we weren't worth the destruction of his car. He got back in his car and drove away. My sisters were both hysterical, although my 10-year-old mind had switched to business mode, and the tears had ceased to flow. My only concern was getting my sisters home safely. We waited for about half an hour, but the car never came back. We braved emerging from the trail and hightailed it home. When we got home, we told my dad everything. He was outraged, understandably so, and took us in his car to drive around and try to find the man. We didn't find him. But my dad called the police once we got back home, and we filed a report. Unfortunately, with only a description of a silver 4-door car with a license plate that began 66 and a older Hispanic man, it wasn't enough to track him down. They filled in Dead Man's Ditch a couple months later, but not before it had saved our lives. So to the creepy naked double sixes guy, let's not meet again. 2. So this is something that happened a few years ago. I didn't consider sharing it, but I have been listening to stories on Let's Not Meet for a year or two, and finally decided it might be worth bringing up. I used to work at a hotel, and I used the word loosely. It was more of an inn that was in a sleepy beach town in Southern California, but it had plans to be part of someone's chain hotels or something. The property was very small, but in a seriously idealistic location, so it was close enough to the water to be expensive, but not big enough to have more than one front desk employee working at a time. My sister and I worked there together, and we shared one manager, aside from the housekeeping, but they got to leave a lot sooner than the unfortunate front desk who worked nights. I used to work mornings, which is a lot more hectic considering checkouts at this particular property were tough. Plus, we didn't have a lot of things like dishwashers, so you had to wash everything by hand. My sister worked the nights, and I took the mornings, but I didn't mind the extra work, only because I didn't feel safe in the hotel at night. The area didn't have a lot of crime. It's just something about the way the front desk area looked. We had the front desk, and in front of it would be the breakfast area. It had tons of windows. It was more window than wall, and you could easily see out into the ocean and into the garden, as well as the stairs that came up to the lobby. In the daytime, it was really charming. But at night, it always felt unsettling to me, especially since if you worked the night shift, you had to stay till 11 p.m. at night, without even closing the front door. Now again, this wouldn't be a big deal, but we had no security, no cameras, not even the housekeeping. It was just you by yourself, with this black void to look out into while you counted down your hours until you could go home. One night I had been stuck with a night shift covering for my sister. I didn't have my uniform or anything, it was kind of unexpected. For whatever reason, I decided to close the lobby door, and I'm glad I had. The door wasn't locked, so any late-night customer could come in, but none did that night. It finally hit 11, and I was super relieved to get off. I began my end-of-shift duties, rolling the day, setting up for breakfast, etc. When I had finished everything, I had grabbed my keys and turned to turn off the lights before leaving when the phone rang. My gut tensed for a second, only because it was so loud, and I was surprised. We were supposed to forward the calls to our manager's phone in case someone got locked out of the room, and we had to come down and help them. No electric plastic keys used here, ladies and gents. Old-fashioned metal keys for everyone. I pretty quickly calmed myself down because I was more annoyed than anything, and stepped around the desk to answer the phone. I gave the "thank you for calling. This is my name. How can I help you?" line, as best as I could, for being annoyed, that is. At first there was nothing, no one said anything. Said hello, and asking if anyone was there. I thought it was a dead call or a butt dial, but I could hear the ocean on the other side. It was a particularly windy night, so the waves were louder than usual. I then just hung up. When I went to leave again, the phone rang a second time. I picked up, gave the same line, and finally got a response. "Is there any rooms available?" He didn't sound drunk. If anything, he sounded collected. The place was next to a bar, so if it was just some drunk dude, I would have known. He sounded calm, unnervingly calm. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, we're closing for the night," I responded. It's not uncommon for someone to find our hotel on, some Priceline type thing and try to get us to give them a lower price over the phone. What he continued to say, however, really scared me, and I don't scare easy. "Oh, so none are available?" "No, we're closing." "What about the one you're standing in front of?" I immediately froze. See, how the lobby is set up is that there's a door also behind the counter, and that door leads to another room that is directly behind the lobby. We're not allowed to close that one either, but I had left it open in case anyone needed help. All of the rooms are outside, it's not within a contained space. All the halls that lead to other rooms and staircases are outside, so anyone can just walk up and walk around the hotel without being a guest or an employee. So quite literally, anyone can just come off the street and be anywhere in the hotel. It's one of the reasons why I left. I turned and closed the door behind me, locking it, and the front door was already closed as well. "No sir, we're all booked up. If there's anything you need, you'll have to call back in the morning." I was noticeably more scared now. I think my voice even cracked. I was going to hang up before he had said something else. "I like your tiger," in the creepiest, most slithering voice I think I ever heard. As I said before, I wasn't wearing my uniform that day. I had a grey shirt that had this rainbow paint splatter type tiger face on the front. I stared out into the windows before it really hit me. The lights from inside the lobby lit it up, so you could see inside of it, while from being inside, you just saw nothing but blackness. He was outside of the lobby, probably most likely staring in through the glass. I didn't get to see anything before he asked, "Is the front door locked?" I threw the phone out of my hand and ran around the desk, locking the deadbolt on the front door. I began to, what I assume was, have a panic attack. I was crying and freaking out. I had never been so scared at one time in a really long time. Then banging came from the door, really aggressive and angry banging. I was too afraid to grab the phone that I had thrown. It had been flung across towards the windows. Didn't know if he was going to break one of them or not. So I grabbed my cell phone and locked myself into the bathroom that was right next to our desk. I called my aunt, who lived less than a mile away. I know I should have called the police, but I was really young at the time, and I was out of my mind. And she was a black belt, so I knew she could defend herself. I called her and barely was able to tell her what was happening between my crying and freaked out breathing. Normally this shouldn't have scared me so bad, but I've dealt with stalkery type stuff before, and it felt the exact same way it did before. Nightmarish. It wasn't until she called me again and told me she was outside the lobby, and that it was locked, that I had left the bathroom. I knew I made a mistake by not calling the police, because he wasn't there anymore by the time she had gotten to the door. So I have no idea what he looks like. and our policy of never keeping the door closed didn't change, even after I had reported to the owners what happened. I've had some issues with my safety after that, but none as scary as this one. If it was some drunk, it would have been fine. He sounded like he fully knew what he wanted to do, whatever it was. After that, I didn't work night shifts anymore, so whoever talked to me, let's not meet. 3. For this, I will be calling myself by the name Mia. When I was young, my parents divorced, and I lived with my dad and my grandparents. They were relatively wealthy and lived opposite a beach. During my life, I've had a lot of experiences with the paranormal, but this isn't one of them. This is completely not paranormal at all, just plain creepy. I was about 17 at the time. I'm currently 19. I had a group of friends. I'll call them Stella, Lily, Cara, James, Alex, Flynn, Hamish, and Dylan. We went out with our families for a huge picnic dinner out on the beach. It was the middle of summer, so we all wore swimmers and I wore a black, high-necked laced bikini. Our parents all decided to go over to Cara and James's house, they are twins, because they ran out of booze, so they took their cars and told us that we could stay over at my place for the night. We decided we wanted to take a dip in the beach pool and play soccer, so we didn't leave straight away. It was the summer holidays before year 12, so we all wanted to enjoy the beach before we went and studied the hell out of the next few months, before HSC. I live in Australia, and I don't know what it's called in other countries. The beach was pretty chilled out with its rules, so we had made a bonfire earlier and sat around it, laughing and eating toasted marshmallows. We played soccer for a while. I was on a team with Alex, Stella, and Flynn. The other team was Cara, Lily, Hamish, and Dylan. James, at the time, had a broken arm and decided not to risk it, so he sat out and watched. I decided to take the goalie position because nobody else decided to do it, and we started playing. I wasn't very good at it, so the first goal scored was against us. The ball shot past my face and landed about 20 meters away from me. It landed at the feet of a family friend who worked at the bar. "Hey, Toby," I yelled in greeting as he kicked the ball to me. He waved and walked past us off the beach, telling us it was late and we should head home soon. Toby was a nice guy, and we all liked him. He was a massive peacekeeper and made me look like a dwarf. At the time, it didn't strike me as weird that he was walking in the direction of his house, but I later realized the bar was supposed to be open for another hour or two, and he never left before then. We continued our game. Our team ended up losing by the time we decided to jump in the pool for a while, and then pack up and head back to my place. It was too dark to swim in the ocean, and we knew it wasn't a good idea to swim in it at night. We all jumped in and played a silly game of Marco Polo, before Hamish yelled something and pointed down the beach. We all turned to see what he was pointing at. "Oi!" Hamish yelled. There was a man standing at the bonfire, poking around in one of our bags. James and Hamish bolted out of the pool and sprinted down the beach. I don't think I have ever seen someone run as fast as that guy did, but he legged it out of there. We followed the two boys and decided to pack up. Stella and I took the rubbish up to the bins by the toilets and out of view of the others. Stella at the time was my girlfriend. We are both girls and are still going out, and I hadn't told any of the guys about it. Stella was about a foot taller than me and looked like a living goddess. Because I am a bit of a germaphobe, I went into the toilets and washed my hands. Stella followed me in and sneakily hugged me from behind, which scared the hell out of me for a moment. I laughed, and she kissed me on the neck. "Come on," I said, trying to walk. "The others probably think we're dead or something." We left the bathroom and turned the corner. Next thing I know, a brick slammed against the wall, just missing Stella's head. We both screamed and ran down the beach towards the others. They all looked alarmed, and we left pretty quickly after that when we explained what happened. The beach was surrounded by thick branches and trees, so there was only one main entry and exit we could walk up. Kara stopped dead in front of us. Because I was shorter than her, I couldn't see what she was looking at. Hamish barged past us and yelled at whatever was there. "Ah, you fucking creep," he spat. "Did you throw a brick at our friend?" There was no response. I could see the figure if I leant on the railing restricting us from going into the bushes. It was the same guy who was poking around in our stuff. He didn't budge. "Get lost," I yelled, followed by similar comments from others behind me. Stella grabbed my hand from behind me and held it in hers. The guy turned towards the railing and jumped over it, into the bushes. He ran off. "What a weirdo," James said when we kept walking. Occurrences like this were unusual for the area, so we were all freaked, but we didn't think much more of it. We stopped by the 7-Eleven a few hundred meters away from my house and got some ice creams. Kara and Hamish went inside, while the rest of us sat on the curb and talked about our plans for the following day. Then I saw him again. He was in the parking lot by the beach, poking his head out from behind a tree. I could just see him because there was a streetlight about 5 or so meters away from him. "Hey look," I said, in an almost mocking tone, "it's that weirdo again." The others all looked. We all uneasily laughed as he saw we were looking at him and moved out of sight. When we finished our ice creams, we started to make the 3 or so 100-meter walk up to my house. There wasn't much of a walk, but the guys all ran ahead of us, kicking the ball around. All of a sudden, something grabbed my bum, and I screamed at the top of my lungs. Instinctively, I turned and kicked, landing it on the guy's inner thigh. It was the same guy. He was huge, about 6'5", wearing massive black combat boots, and a coat even though it was super hot out. He wore a beanie too, so I couldn't see his hair. "Hello, Mia," he said in this creepy, slightly English-accented voice. He sounded like the kind of guy who would do voice acting on a kids' show, or an educational video like, "What animal is this?" or some bullshit. Kara and Lily back up behind me, and Stella stays by my side. I may have been scared shitless, but I did martial arts and would at least be able to buy some time for the others. "What the fuck do you want?" I asked, realizing the boys were too far away and were probably at my house by now. He pulled a small white card from his pocket and dangled it in front of my face. "You left this at the beach, Mia." He smiled as I realized it was my driver's license. "Hey!" I yelled, trying to snatch it off him. Luckily, the sharp whoop of a police vehicle sounded from down the road behind us. We and the man sprinted in opposite directions. We didn't stop running until we got into my house. We ran around frantically, locking all the doors, and explained everything to the boys. "We should go to your room," Dylan suggested, as we all bolted upstairs and into my room. I looked through my window. There he was, standing there with this stupid grin on his face. "He's outside the fucking window," I whispered in a hissing tone. The others all dropped to the ground, and I peered out to look. "This is fucking terrifying," Stella cursed, sitting on the floor next to me. "Does anyone have a phone?" Hamish asked. All of us shook our heads. Kara looks over again at the guy. "Mia, it's moved," she warned. I stuck my head over, and sure enough, he was standing at my old playset in the yard. Hamish crawled across the room and ran at the speed of lightning down the stairs. Stella turned to me and said, "We need to keep looking at that guy. We need to go full weeping angel mode on them." We both poked our heads up. He had moved again. He now stood with his head just in view over the porch cover. We all looked, sure enough. He didn't move until we heard sirens. He then ran. I thought it was all over until a few weeks after that. I was home alone and heard a knock on the door. It was a Sunday, and I was studying in my room. I knew I shouldn't answer, So I didn't for a few moments, and then slowly walked downstairs. There was a letter pushed up beneath the door. It was addressed to me. It was a letter and a group of photos sent from him. The letter went something along the lines of, "Hello, Mia. Do you still have that little black bikini? It looks so good on you. I took some photos of you too, when you were alone. You're just so cute, aren't you? We should meet, get to know each other. Without the people you were with last time. I love you, Mia. You are what I want. Be mine, please?" Signed, Jack. The photos were all of me, in my bedroom and outside. Some were of me naked when I was getting changed after a shower. I freaked out. My parents immediately gave the note to the police, and this guy was tracked down. He was let out, though. I have never seen him again to this day. Creepy guy from the beach, let's not meet again. And stay the hell away from me and my girlfriend. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 201. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed their stories to be used in this video, and of course apologies to anyone I kept waiting for a bit longer than I probably should have. Sometimes I misplace stories and forget about them and things like that. I usually remember eventually though. Well, I hope everyone's having a nice weekend, and if you happen to be working this Saturday, I hope the day or evening goes swiftly for you. I'm hoping just to be video games and movies this weekend is what I'm hoping for. I keep meaning to watch more films than I do. I've got a list of ones that I need to get through, but I never seem to find the time to do it, so hopefully I'll manage to get through a couple of those this weekend. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.